Alexa, turn off. Hello. Alexa, turn off. Hello. How are you all tonight? This lighting is a little bit off. Give me 1 second, guys. How are you? Welcome. Get in. I hope you guys are doing okay tonight. It is a wonderful night. It is 7 p.m. and we are going to get started. Good evening. I hope that everyone had a wonderful day. Today is Monday, y'all. Monday is always like one of those days where it's just busy for me. And so, by it being so busy, I was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of take some time for myself. And I did, just got a lot of things going on. I'm going to be the big 45 on Wednesday. So I'm really just preparing for my birthday and preparing for my party on Friday. So I'm super excited about it. It's been like a time. So many things have been happening, but I am excited about tonight, and I am excited to welcome you all in. Happy Monday, happy 7th episode. Guys, this is the 7th episode, and I'm so excited to have you all here. Come on. Welcome to Healing Unlocked, where it is your girl, Dr. Tasha Rose, your licensed professional counselor, trauma-informed speaker, author, and faith-based therapist, y'all. I specialize in helping individuals, especially women, who heal from childhood trauma and to heal from emotional wounds and relational patterns, and through both psychological and insight from the biblical truth. I don't only work with women, I do work with males as well. So this is a space not just for women, but for males and females, so who really want to grow intentionally. So this is not just an existence of passive healing. This is an existence of healing every parts of you, and male and female both. Here, we're not going to shame. We are not going to pretend. We're not going to hide behind cliche, right? That's big. We are not going to hide behind cliche. We're going to unpack real life events. We're going to explore emotional maturity. We're going to bridge faith with psychology. And we're going to create a room for accountability, peace, and transformation. How about that, right? So Healing Unlocked is about becoming emotionally aware, spiritually grounded, and courageous enough to face yourself even when it's hard, through honesty and grace, right? So because growth isn't automatic, it's going to be intentional. So welcome to episode 7, where we are going to be talking about, are we growing or are we existing? Guys, this came up because I've been analyzing some of my past recordings, and just like listening to like people talk and different things like that. And I was thinking to myself, like, how many people really think that they're growing, right? What does growth look like? What is growth, right? Sometimes we think that people are growing because they might have something new in their life. We might think that people are growing because things are going well for them. We might think that we're growing because finally we got out of a relationship, or we got out of something that was maybe bringing us down. Or maybe we think that we're growing because we're not taking accountability for the things that we have caused ourselves. So when I'm talking about what is growth, I'm really asking that question and wanting to know, are you growing or are you just existing, right? So growth can be uncomfortable, y'all. It's an uncomfortable feeling at times. So, but we like to stay in the same place sometimes. Sometimes we like to stay in spaces that are not healthy for us. We like to stay in spaces that are not helping us move forward, maybe backwards, maybe just stagnant. Sometimes we just like to stay there and we say that we're growing, right? So the question is, which discomfort are you choosing? Are you choosing uncomfortable, or are you staying the same? I'm going to do uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but I'm going to do uncomfortable. I will rather be uncomfortable in order to grow, in order to change, than just to stay the same and complain about the same things over and over again. Right? So growth is intentional, it's reflective, it requires accountability, it involves behavioral change. It often becomes very uncomfortable before transformational, and then it produces emotional maturity. Hey Ty, how are you? Happy Monday. What existing is. So now we talked about what growth is. So what's existing? So that's repeating patterns, blaming others, avoiding hard conversations, calling isolation peace, calling stubbornness boundaries, and calling silence healing. Y'all, can y'all say that again? I will. Existing is repeating patterns, blaming others, avoiding hard conversations, calling isolation peace, calling stubbornness boundaries, and calling silence healing. I have heard people say these things often, and it's not always growth. A lot of it is just you being stubborn. A lot of it is just you being avoided. A lot of it is just you not being accountable for your behavior or your actions. So some of us aren't healing, we're just hiding it better than others, right? Some of us are just hiding from the things that we're uncomfortable to deal with, or we're unable to deal with at the time. So therefore we say, oh, I'm just in my healing stage. But when you're healing and you're stuck in something, then how are you growing? You know, it's just like when you have because my mom is like a plant person, so like she takes plants, like once, like she'll say like it's pot bound or something like that, and she has to take it out and like, break it up a little bit, and then like she has to replant it into a bigger pot. And when a plant is in a pot that's too small, it's the roots aren't growing, right? And it's not as healthy. It may not die, but it's not as healthy. It stays stagnant. And that's kind of the same thing with us. When we need to grow, we rather just stay in our spaces sometime and not get repotted into spaces that might be uncomfortable in a bigger space or in a new environment. So we just really stay. And even though we've kind of outgrown these things, we just stay and we say, oh, well, I'm going to just stay here because I need my peace. Right? So when we think about psychology teaches that when behavior doesn't align with our values, we feel internal discomfort. So, which is cognitive dissonance, right? So therefore, I don't like the way that I feel. So I'm gonna stay over here. I'm not gonna adjust, right? I'm not gonna move. I'm just gonna stay over here. But growth says, I need to adjust. When you are dealing with growth, you are ready to adjust the way you think, the way you move, the way you speak, the way you behave. You are ready. And then avoidance, which is the same as existing, is just, this is who I am. You gonna take it or leave it. I've heard people say that all the time. I've heard people say, this is just who I am. Okay, but you're not growing. If you're not willing to make changes to grow, then being who you are is going to keep you in a space of unhappy, unhealthy patterns. Do you want to stay in an unhealthy pattern for the rest of your life? I know I don't. I don't know about you guys, but that's a real question. Do you want to stay in unhealthy patterns for the rest of your life? So when I hear people say, oh, I'm growing, I'm in my peace and all that stuff, and it's like, okay, what does that look like? I did some clips off of one of my first videos, I think it was, And I did some clips, and I got a lot of feedback with regards to um what does peace, like what does finding your peace look like. And a lot of people, they've commented, and they might make a comment about, not, setting boundaries. And I'm like, okay, well, what's boundaries? Some people use these terms but not really know what they are, or really just is saying, I want to stay where I am because I'm not willing, or I'm not ready to move yet. I'm not ready to change the behavior. I'm not ready to be different. So they stay in their spaces and they say that's peaceful. It's not peaceful, because what happens when you have to change? You know, real growth requires accountability. Right? When you think about real growth, it's a defense mechanism that blocks growth. So, defense mechanism that blocks growth is lack of accountability. When you are unable to accept accountability, you are blocking growth. So, when you think about some of the things that people do to block growth, it's projection. You made me act like this. It's because of you. Like, if you didn't do this, I wouldn't have done that. Instead of thinking or paying attention to your behavior in the situation, right? Rationalization. That's just my personality. Your personality is just being mean. Your personality is just not listening, or not being able to sit and have a civilized or an adult conversation, right? Your personality is just, you know, I'm gonna act like you hurt my feelings, or anytime you hurt my feelings, anytime I hurt your feelings, I'm supposed to respond in a I apologize and don't do it again. But if you hurt my feelings, it's okay, because I know your personality and you know I'm sensitive. That is something that people say when they don't want to take accountability over their actions. Take time sometime and think about, what is it that you have done or that you're doing to cause the reaction of someone else. We don't always do that because we're so quick on how we feel. And then we only respond to the way that someone reacted to what we did. So, avoidance, right? We don't like drama. Like, how many times have you heard people say, I just don't like no drama, I'm not going to even do this, blah, blah. No, that's avoidance. That's not growth. Because if something is bothering you, you can have a conversation. If someone did something to you that was bad, you can have a conversation. Not just, oh, I don't like drama. No, you like to be avoided. You don't want to deal with the things that are intertwined that might have caused a rift in the first place. How many of you do that? How many of you avoid certain situations and say, I don't like drama? I ain't never been that one. But I know a lot of people who do. I just don't like drama. I like to be in the middle of things. But sometimes it's like, it's not about being in the middle of things. It's about taking accountability for what part you played. If you played a part in something, it's not about you not liking drama. It's about you taking accountability for your part in that and having a conversation. And then emotional withdrawal. I'm protecting my peace. Sometimes when people do this, like, they'll say stuff like, oh, well, I just need some time to myself. But then they come back when they're emotionally ready, but there's still no conversation to what caused the emotional breakdown. And that is not growth either. That is just existing. You cannot protect peace that you're not willing to deal with, or what caused you to feel emotionally dysregulated. You can't just wait 3 or 4 days until you start feeling better, and now you want to go and have a conversation like it never happened, but then not realizing that that still bothers you. It's still going to come up. So it's not protecting your peace. It's actually causing you more anxiety. It's actually causing you more anxiety when you are emotionally withdrawing, right? So again, emotionally withdrawing is also a state of not taking accountability for your actions. So what does healing growth looks like? Well, that's owning your tone. If you say something that maybe like doesn't sit well with someone, or you realize that you might have come off a little bit rough or aggressive, apologizing and paying attention. Hey, you know what? I said that kind of wrong. Let me rephrase, right? Because some people don't like to just say, you know what, my bad, right? Owning your triggers. There might be something that people are doing around you that's triggering you. And instead of you saying, hey, when you do that, that kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. Can we try not to do that? Or, letting someone know, you're doing it again, owning your triggers. Because what ends up happening is that you're not owning your triggers. So you end up emotionally withdrawing, right? And then that causes more problems because you're not being honest about why those things are bothering you. I'm just move. Hey Patrice, how are you? Nice to see you. I hope that you are having a wonderful Monday. Owning your patterns is another, like, what healthy growth looks like. If you know that there is a pattern that is probably not the best, owning it. You gotta own. I have a pattern of being late, right? So if I have a pattern of being late, then guess what? I'm gonna let people know, hey, I might be running a little late, or I'm gonna always give somebody a later time because I know I'm gonna be late. That's owning your patterns, right? I know people who are like, they'll say, oh, let's meet at 5. And then they don't get there to 5:45, 6 o'clock. But in their mind, well, I have I'll never be on time, but that's not okay. That's an unhealthy pattern. But when you own your pattern, it can say, hey, y'all know I might be late. So do y'all want to meet at 5? Like, is that a hard 5? Or is it, do we have some leeway? Right? Owning your pattern. Or if you know you're late, then you walk in, you're not expecting somebody to wait for you. You're not expecting someone to, like, oh, well, you should have did this. No, it's, y'all, I'm sorry, I'm late. And that's it. It's not, oh, girl, no, or man, no, it's owning your pattern, owning being late, owning messing up the plans, right? Or like you have a pattern of being on your phone all the time right before you go home. And your partner or your children or someone has told you, like, that irritates them. Or when a child gets into the car and they're like, Mom, Dad, you're always on the phone. And then you constantly do it. And it's a pattern for you. But instead of you owning it, you get upset with the child or the mate or whatever, instead of just saying, you know what, let me work on this pattern that I have because I want to grow. I want to be a better person for the people around me and for myself. So I'm going to like acknowledge that, okay, I'm about to go pick up my daughter, about to go pick up my son, about to go pick up my spouse. I'm not going to be on the phone. Or I'm about to walk into this house and let me hang up this phone. These are patterns that we have to accept. We have to own. I know I have a pattern of doing X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to work on that. And then if somebody calls me out on it, I'm going to take accountability of, you know what, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. I'm still working on it. Instead of getting upset because they call you out on it. That's growth. That's growth. That's how you know that you are growing, when someone calls you out on your stuff. And instead of you becoming defensive or offended, you own it and try to do better. Try to do better. But you know how you could do better, guys? Actually practicing, actually implementing. If you know that you got plans with your partner to go somewhere, or if you know you got to be to work at 8 o'clock and you know that you'll be running slow, set multiple timers. What's going to get you out the door so you're not late. What's going to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do? You make dinner, or you wash laundry, or whatever it is that that you struggle with, so that you don't have to hear the backlash of other people, or you not making sure that you're doing your part. We have to take accountability of how we move. That's how we grow. That's how we have healthy relationships. That's how we're good to ourselves, by taking accountability so that we can grow and be better. Emotional maturity versus emotional comfort. What does that mean? Comfort says, I don't like how this feels. Maturity says, what is this trying to teach me? So when you think about growth, which one would you rather have? What is this trying to teach me? Or I just don't like how that feel. I know for me, I used to feel like the first one, the comfort, right? I used to feel like, oh, you know what? I don't like how that making me feel, so I don't know parts to it, or I'm gonna tell you. That used to be me. But now it's more so, what is this trying to teach me? What is this situation trying to teach me? What is this behavior, or what is this person trying to teach me? Because not everything is a you shouldn't always feel like you got to defend yourself. You shouldn't always feel like you got to that somebody's trying to be offensive to you. So when you start to feel that way, you need to be asking yourself more questions around, what is this trying to teach me? What do I need to learn from this? Not, oh, I don't like this, I'm gonna stay away. Because how you gonna grow? It's kind of like exposure therapy. Sometimes you gotta just push yourself in there. You gotta get in there. You gotta like meet it head on. You have to go there and talk through it and be vulnerable and all those things, so that you can. It's not about being comfortable when you're growing. When you're growing, it's about being uncomfortable, because it's about change. Growth leads to change, and healthy change leads to progression. And that is so important. And if we're not progressing, what are we doing? What are we doing if we're not progressing? So Patrice says, teaching moment, because it will help you recognize your behavior and develop a system to not make that mistake again. Yes. And that is kind of, that practice part, right? Because don't get me wrong, guys, growth is not easy. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. You're not going to say, okay, I'm going to stop doing this, and then you're never going to do it. I have a friend who cusses, she always say, I'm trying to stop cussing. And I'm like, girl, take your time and stop saying I'm trying to stop cussing. But when you catch yourself, just stop and turn it around. Say something different, right? Because we say this, oh, well, you know what? I'm trying to stop doing this, but just stop doing it. Right? And when you find yourself doing it, just catch yourself. My bad. You don't got to do all that extra stuff, because we start to tell our brain, oh, I'm trying. No, just, oh, my bad. Keep going. Oh, I didn't mean, oh. But we don't have to put any type of like, what do you call it? We don't have to try to make excuses on why it's taking us longer to maybe develop into the person that we're trying to be, the change that we want. You hold yourself accountable. I said, I'm not going to be cussing. I cussed. You know what? My bad. All right, God, help me. I'm working on this, right? Growth can be scary because it takes you out of your comfort zone. Yes. And so that's what we're talking about. So comfort is like, this is what I'm used to. I'm staying right here in this chair. If I go into that other chair, which is better for me, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but eventually I'm going to get used to that as well. And it actually might be better for my posture. It actually might be better for just my back or whatever it is, right? When I got my new computer, I was so comfortable with my old computer that when I got my new computer, I was like, I don't like this. But then I got used to the new computer and realized it's a better computer. So sometimes, like I said, like we don't even realize that we have patterns or we have to grow because we're so used to being comfortable. And comfortable or comfortability will make you stagnant. And we want to grow, y'all. We want to progress. We want to get to another level. Like, I'm going to be 45 on Wednesday. And I feel like I need to progress to a different level because I'm hitting a different level. I'm hitting a different bracket of age. I have to have a colonoscopy, y'all. Like, that's not something I would have thought about at 40 or 30 or 35. Like, I wouldn't have thought about those things. So it's like we should be growing as we age. And as we age, if you notice, our bodies become uncomfortable because we have to go through things. But that doesn't mean anything negative. It just means that sometimes you got to move, you got to change, you got to be uncomfortable in order to get better, in order to get the right medication or the right messaging in your system, or to make sure you're okay. Right? So growth is not always comfortable. And then we got to look at it as growth is not about right. Growth is about being responsible. When I say that I'm trying to grow, or if I say I'm growing, I'm being more responsible of Tasha, of what God has placed in my space. I have the responsibility to be better, to be more aware, to be more fruitful. I have that responsibility, and so do you. So when you think about growth, it's not about what's right or what's wrong. It's about what responsibility do you have to do things differently, to have a better life. And that's really what that's about. I also thought about some cliches that we have, like, or you might hear when you're thinking about like what growth is compared to what just existing, right? Because we exist sometime just because. We exist because it's so it's so like cool to say, oh yeah, I do this every week. Okay, but what is it? What are you doing with it? Like, if you go to the gym every week, 3-4 times a week, and you're doing the wrong exercise, but you've gotten comfortable with the exercises that you're doing, are you going to get any results? Probably not. You might get muscles in certain places, right? You might feel productive. But if you're doing the wrong exercises for what your body needs, there's not going to be any results. And eventually you're going to say things like, well, the gym ain't working. It's a waste of time. It's the same thing with growth. Just because you're comfortable in something doesn't mean it's working for you or working for your relationships. Sometimes we get so comfortable in relationships that we don't think that we need to change because we're like, oh, well, people, I've heard people say like certain relationships turn toxic. It doesn't have to be toxic. If people are willing to grow together, if people are willing to take accountability, if people are willing to see what they need to work on or what works for them and what doesn't work for them. But again, people don't like uncomfortable situations, so they will stay in spaces and continue to be unhappy and continue to be stubborn and mean and selfish. Just because you're in a relationship that's not growing doesn't mean you leave. It means sit down and ask the question, what is it that we need to work on? What is it that I'm doing that maybe I could be doing differently? If both of you take time and sit down and ask those questions, how many relationships could be saved? If we stop running from things that we need to take accountability for. I just think that's so like mind baffling to me. Like when people come in my office sometime and I listen to some of the things that relate like certain like job relationships and then intimate relationships, I'm like, so what could you do differently? If you go to work on time, you won't have to keep going in your boss's office. Right? If you actually go by the agenda, you don't have to worry. If you write an email and say, hey, I completed this, I just want to make sure then you don't have to worry about anybody ask you if you've done something. Instead of up and wanting to leave a job just because they're asking too many questions. They're asking questions because something's not working. So it's up to both of you to sit down and come up with a plan. What is it that we need to do? What is it that this is showing me? I noticed that this is happening, and what can I do to help you? And vice versa. And relationships, I'm noticing that we're arguing more, that we're not as close anymore. What is it that we might need to work on? And then separately, what is it that I need to work on to be a better person for myself, that I can be a better person to my family? We don't like to ask these questions, because when we ask these questions, that means we have to take accountability of our actions. We have to now put ourselves up and say, you know what? I am the problem. I got to work on this communication issue. I got to work on, putting things before my partner. I got to work on not doing some of the things that my partner has asked me to do. We get so stuck on what we don't want to change that's when growth fails for us. And that's how relationships and partnerships dissolve, because we're not willing, guys, to step out of our comfort zones. So some of the cliches might be, I cut everybody off because I'm protecting my peace. And the truth is, sometimes you're protecting your ego. What do y'all think about that? That accountability part is definitely something that keeps us back. Yes, it does, Devine. Accountability is so huge. If we take accountability for the things that we do, we could have better relationships. Like I talked about earlier on, I talked about tone, right? Sometimes our tone can really throw how someone, like us telling someone how we feel, right? Or letting someone know like what they didn't sit well. We may not even really be upset, but because the way we came off with a really, really agitated or aggressive tone. And now when the person say, I don't like the way, when you said that to me, it made me feel blah, blah. Instead of us saying, well, just say, what, my bad. But I would like to make sure you understand that when you do these things, that hurts me or this makes me uncomfortable, right? Not going back and arguing. Yes, misinterpreting is a tone. Yes, it is. And that's why certain things, like they tell you with like important things don't text, right? They say that important things don't text. And I'm also real big too with important things, email, but also make a phone call. Hey, like if I'm a boss, I'm going to tell my staff, hey, this is what's going on, blah, blah. I'm going to have that conversation. So when I send out that email, the email might be a little stronger than what the conversation had. So they're able to look at the email and be able to say, okay, this is what she's talking about. Whereas if I don't have the conversation, they can misinterpret that email as me blaming them on something that is just a company policy that has been changed, right? Or if there is misinterpreting of a tone or interpreting of what someone is actually meaning, what's the best thing we need to do? Hey, I just want to ask you, like, did I do something wrong? Or when you said that, did you mean this? But no, sometimes we go from 0 to 100. And then that causes more negative, back and forth. And so we really do need to make sure that we're paying attention to our tone. We need to make sure that we're taking ownership of the triggers that we have, and we're not throwing it on people, because we are human and we're gonna mess up, guys. Devine says, I have to be careful with texts and emails. I like caps for emphasis, which may come off as yelling. Yes, this is true. So like, and I guess like in the text world and email world, like when you're using capital letters, like it's like, why are you yelling at me? But in reality, your cap lock could just be stuck, right? Or you just do it because it looks better to you, or you might have a vision impairment. People don't know. But if you send in a text message with like capital letters, people will think that you're yelling, right? And so that's why I tell people, like, sometimes a text and a call or face to face and a follow up is good, because then you kind of understand what's happening. But sometimes when you're just shooting a text and then, the person calls you and it's like, what? And it's like, instead of you getting upset, be like, hey, I got your text message or I got your email. I just want to make sure. We have to also take accountability of our triggers, right? Because we know that sometimes if somebody calls you after receiving a text or vice versa, we then can get, and the best thing is, hey, I just want to clarify this text message, or I just want to clarify this email. We have to do better with that. We all do, including me. So I'm not against that. Healthy boundaries involves communication, not silent treatment. Sometimes people will go silent because they feel like you have hurt them instead of just asking you or having that conversation. If you are a silent punisher, stop it. Have a conversation. It is not going to hurt. Have a conversation. All right. Myth 2. That's just how I am. That's how you've trained yourself to respond, because neuroplasticity proves that we can rewire behaviors and change is possible. So when people say stuff, oh, that's just how I am, that's a lie. That is a lie. Because if you really want to change, you will work on change. And to be growing in a positive way, you want to change some behaviors that you learned or you've kind of held together to protect yourself over 50, 40, 30 years, right? Because we have neuroplasticity and it helps us to change the way that we think. We can rewire. And that's what people don't understand. It might be harder for adults, but it still can happen. So if you really want to change, practice. Take ownership if you really want to change. So that is a myth of that's just who I am or how I am. Myth, okay, hold on. Sometimes being silent protects me from saying the wrong thing. So I come around and say the right thing. Yes. And when we're talking about silent punishment, I'm not talking about taking a moment before you respond, pausing and going through. That is not silent punisher. I'm talking about people that go days and weeks and months without speaking to someone who they feel has wronged them, or who they feel has like brought an emotional like bubble that's really, really crucial. So just be mindful that when I say silent punisher, it's not somebody just taking maybe a day or two just to kind of, and then come back and actually go through why they did what they did or why that bothered them. When I talk about silence punisher, I'm talking about those who just don't talk about it. And I also am thinking about people who go silent but never brings it back, never bring the problem back. Yeah. I think we all have to work on some of these things. And that's why I do these episodes, because it's like these are real life things that people are struggling with. And it's stopping us from having healthy relationships and healthy lives, because we have all this negative stuff. Society has taught us so many cliches and negativity, and it's not good. So myth number 3 is I'm not arguing anymore. That sometimes just mean you are are you resolving a situation, or are you suppressing a situation? So we think about it, we know that suppression is just holding everything in, and we know that resolving is kind of talking through things. So one of the things that I try to teach clients when they come in is that there's a lot of suppressed trauma that we hold on to, right? We suppress things, and sometimes we suppress it so well that we actually forget it happened. And though we don't realize that when certain things happen, that's how we get to, that's just how I am, because you're being triggered by things that you've suppressed. So we don't want to suppress things. If something bothers you, yes, take some time, process it, talk about it, but you got to resolve it, guys. You cannot say, I'm not arguing, because it doesn't have to be an argument to tell somebody how they make you feel or what that did to you or what you thought that was. And sometimes when you have a conversation, then you set a boundary. You know what? Since you don't really care or understand where I'm coming from, that's fine. So now you know I'm setting a boundary. There's certain things I just can't talk to this person about, or there's certain things I can't depend on this person for. So although I'm talking about growth, guys, I'm also talking about, we still need to have some healthy boundaries as well. So in such situations, similar when you're constantly telling someone how they're making you feel, it's not about arguing, it's about then setting a boundary. So it's not that you're arguing, you're gonna resolve the situation, and sometimes the resolving is setting a boundary where you're no longer going to allow yourself to get back in these spaces, right? Suppression leads to resentment, and then resolution leads to intimacy, right? So when we suppress things, then we begin to resent people, right? I know many people who come in, because I deal a lot with childhood trauma, and I know a lot of people who come in with resentment towards their parents because they have suppressed so many. Sorry, guys, they have suppressed so many things in their lives that they now have all this resentment to their parents, but they don't know why, right? And it's because they've suppressed all the negative things that have happened to them. Or they're around certain people and certain people make them upset. And they're like, I don't know why I get like that when I'm around such and such, because you've suppressed something so much that now you've forgotten it, but it's still impacting you. Patrice said that can mean you may have not had a voice in the past, so you will not argue. This is true. But again, that's suppression. That is suppression. When we start feeling like we don't have a voice, or if we feel like we don't have a voice and so we don't argue, that is a trauma response. So understand, when I'm talking about resolution compared to suppression, I'm talking about we want to resolve the issue. What is the issue? Why are we disagreeing? What are we disagreeing about? Is it how we're saying it? Is it because you're louder? Is it because you feel like you're not being heard? What is the disagreement? Sometimes people just argue, and it can be the simplest thing. Just because I said red and you said blue, but we're talking about the same thing. But understanding what the resolution needs to be will help you resolve it, not suppress it. Okay? And then when it says resolution leads to intimacy, once you can understand what the issues are, you should be able to get back to have great relationships with people. And that might also just mean you set boundaries with people. Okay? Myth number 4, I'm focusing on me. The truth is, you are developing an avoidant responsibility. You are avoiding responsibility. And that right there, it's like, I'm focusing on me, but you haven't dealt with the issue. How are you growing if you're not dealing with the issue? Many of us don't pay attention to that. We don't see that, right? So understanding that growth requires skill development, emotional regulation, hard conversations, and behavioral consistency. Setting boundaries isn't that part of focusing on me. Okay. Setting boundaries isn't the part that you need to, in order to focus on you, the boundaries part. I just want to make sure I'm getting that right. So when you're talking about are you developing or are you avoiding responsibility, I want you to think about that. When you think about I'm focusing on me, what does that look like? Having a hard conversation with somebody can really get you from that feeling of I need to push back to, like, you know what, this was all a misunderstanding. Or, you know what, I respect what you're saying, and I'm sorry I responded that way, and blah, blah, blah. Hard conversations are so important when we're talking about growth. You know, taking accountability for how you treated somebody, taking responsibility on how you continue to treat somebody, apologizing to somebody, right? When I hear people like in relationships, I hear people say, I'm just focusing on me right now. What does that mean? If you still love this person, what does that mean? Because focusing on you literally just mean like, I'm just going to avoid the situation. I'm going to go find somebody else that don't really know me so I can just keep doing what I'm doing because I'm not ready to change my behavior. Instead of sitting down, having the conversation, I'm scared, I'm worried, I've been hurt. This is coming up for me. I've never seen a healthy relationship, and every time I get close, I get scared, so I run. Or, yes, I was talking to this girl. Yes, I was talking to this man I shouldn't have been talking. Yes, I was flirting. And I'm not gonna do that again. That's not focusing. Or you got caught in the act of lying. You got caught in the act of doing something that was unfavorable, right? Skill development, using skills, learning how to process before you respond. Sometimes we're so hyper, we're so amped. Somebody pisses us off, first thing we do, blah, blah, blah. And then a day, two later, we like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I was wrong. But instead of you picking up the phone and saying, I'm sorry, well, she should have did this. Oh, well, he should have did that. No, you shouldn't have said what you said. It's okay to be upset, but you still have to be responsible with your words or your actions. All right, Davine says, yes, when I put myself first to take time to get myself right, sometimes meaning setting boundaries. Oh, yes. Yes. And Davine, I want you to be mindful too. It's not about getting yourself right. It's about processing what just happened. That's what like we also gotta be careful what the words that we use. You're right. You're doing well. Sometimes it's just, I need to sit and process what I just heard to understand if I need to put a boundary up or if I need to work on something for myself. Right? But then when you start working towards things like, I don't think this person hears me. Like I've talked to them, I've been cool. After a while, that's a boundary. Now they're not caring about you. They're not paying attention to what you're saying. And that's when the boundaries come in. All right. So I want you to ask yourself, what pattern have I labeled growth that might actually be avoidance? If anybody wants to answer that, that would be great. I would love to hear it. I think for me, one of the things that I did that I used to think was growth, I used to feel like talking through everything, I had to do it. And I realized that I was just avoiding the fact that I had some trauma that I hadn't dealt with, and I needed to go back and I had to deal with that so that I didn't feel like everything had to be spoken about. Right. And I didn't have to continue to like question everything, just set a boundary and stick to it. But sometimes when we have a trauma within us, we feel like we have to ask that question or we have to get the information. And that sometimes can be a trauma response. And I found myself doing that. And I was like, yeah, no, some things I don't need to know. Something I just need to, pray about it. Some things I have to ask, like I said, what is it that I need to do? For me, it was not addressing certain things for fear of starting something. Yes. A lot of people feel that way. That's that whole thing about like, I just don't want the drama, right? Yeah. Some people do that. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's not a good space, because then like it's going to constantly happen. And then when you finally say something, then somebody thinks that, you being funny, or you just doing this because of somebody else, or And it just goes into a whole nother thing. So yeah, I get it. Don't do that no more. Don't do that no more. You better talk to people. Certain things you do need to address. Certain things you do. Okay, another question is, do the people closest to you experience you as evolving? Where you are today with all the changes or things in your life, when people see you, do they feel like you're evolving or do they feel like you're just doing the same thing? I know that I am evolving and people have told me I'm evolving, so I am grateful. I'm grateful that I am growing even though it's uncomfortable as ever. It's so uncomfortable, y'all. But I know that as I grow and I'm growing to the next level, I like the next level, right? So I really do like the next level and I'm gonna continue to grow. Another question is, when was the last time that I apologized or you apologized without explaining yourself? Hmm. Yes, praise God. I think even my doggies know this. Yes, because when you can even feel it and people around you can feel, especially your loved ones, the ones that's been there for you day one. Like when people start seeing the changes within you, it is like it's something else. It's something else. So, when you think about how these things have changed your life by just like evolving and doing things differently for the better, people will start to see it and it feels good. It feels good. So, yes, praise God. Another question is, do you seek correction or do you get defensive? I used to hate with a capital H, right? I used to hate being corrected, but now I take it. And now I literally have to sit there and be like, okay, Tasha, you were wrong. And that was hard for me, y'all. That was very hard for me. But over time, I realized that, I just wanted to be better. I wanted to be closer to God. I wanted better relationships. And there's nothing wrong with being corrected. But one thing I will say is how people correct you. I have a girlfriend, like she has such a great tone. And so she would say things to me, and I used to always get defensive, even though she said it to me, but I never got mad at her. I just used to get defensive when she said things. But then it was like after I started realizing that, like, yeah, like I needed to be corrected on some things. Like I was able to see it and I no longer get defensive. Now I'll be like, okay, well, was I wrong? Okay, cool. Yeah. I seek correction and I will reflect on what I did. Yeah. Yeah. That's good, Tina. I seek now. I definitely seek it now. It's easier for me to hear correction now than before. But I also feel too, depending on who's correcting you, will also help you. Like if somebody's just being nasty because you pissed them off or you were wrong and now they want to just prove to you that you're wrong, that can make you feel a certain way and become defensive as well. But I'm more so looking at how people speak to me when they're correcting me. And then even if they're speaking to me in a negative way, I can still say, you know what, I get it, but you don't have to say it like that, yo. So it's hard for me, but necessary. I'm working on the not getting defensive or too overly emotional. Okay, we'll keep working on it, Davine. Like I said earlier, it's not a get fixed quick thing. This is something that you continue to work on. If you're in your anything over 25, it's harder to start to, you know, do things differently if you're not constantly practicing it or acknowledging it. But again, we have to, in order to correct triggers, you have to first identify triggers. So these types of conversations help people understand like some of the things that they're doing and say, oh, wait, that's not normal, or I shouldn't be doing that. So give yourself grace, girl. And when you find yourself in those spaces, sometimes even in the moment, stop yourself. breathe and say, you know what, give me 5 minutes. Think about what the conversation or the interaction was, and then try to go back and try to see if anything positive can come from it. Patrice says, this was this was your spirit telling you what she was saying was right and was just fighting. That's how I feel when someone tells me something. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. But her tone was always very respectful. So although it still was, I was still being offended because I felt like, dang, like, what you mean? I never got upset with her where I was like, I couldn't talk to her because she never spoke to me in a way that I felt judged or I felt like she was being mean. She would just call me out on stuff. And I used to be like, but you know, and I would always have like a rebuttal. But then over time, I started realizing that a lot of what she was saying had a lot of truth to it. And I had to work on those things. And I'm grateful for that. And so if you have someone that's telling you something, even if you don't like what they're telling you, take a moment and think about what they're saying before becoming so defensive that you just run or you argue or whatever. Like, really pay attention to that. And then, am I becoming softer in character or just more distant? I am becoming softer. I know I am, because I do believe that my character has become softer. I think I'm more like cool to be around. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm more relaxed. Like, I don't, I believe that. And I see that within my core group too. Like, I want to be around people who are just relaxed and there's not a lot of drama and there's not, animosity or resentment in the space. Like, we can talk to each other, we can tell each other when we're doing too much. Like, that's dope. And I feel like my character is becoming softer because now it's like when it's too much, just like chaos, like I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be a part of that. And it's not to judge anybody. It's just that sometimes you just got to know when spaces aren't for you and, learn how to exit, right? So growth is visible in behavior, and it's not just vocabulary. It is really what your behavior is presenting, facial expressions, how you move, body language, how you respond, like through a text or email, talking to someone, how you respond back to them. It is not just the the language, the behavior. It is also the vocabulary. We have to be careful with the vocabulary. We have to be careful with our behaviors. If you say that you love someone like God says, like Jesus loves us, he shows it. Don't tell me you love me, but I can never count on you. I can never count on you to be there for me. Don't tell me you love me, but you continue to hurt me. Don't tell somebody that you love them and you can't be counted on. Don't tell somebody that you love them, but that you can't be honest with them. Stop using those terms, because love is an action word, right? And behaviors are part of love. So if you're loving someone, you're going to behave the way that you say you love them. You're not going to try to hurt them. And if you do hurt them, you're going to learn, you're going to want to apologize. You're going to want to make things right when you love somebody. So understand that. All right. So I want to also leave you guys with a few Bible verses before we end. So Proverbs 27:17 is iron sharpens iron. So be around people that also want to do well and wants to grow in the way that you want to grow. James 1:22, be doers of the word, be around, do things that the word tells you to do. If God is telling you to love your neighbor, then you have to love your neighbor. If Jesus says we got to forgive, then that's what you have to do, no matter what it is. And then Psalms 139:23-24, search me, oh God. If you ask God to search you, don't just ask him to search you and still stay the same way. Search you and make you give you a clean heart. Soften your heart. Have him search you so that he can show you what you need to work on, so that you can grow, so you can you can get out of that comfort zone and get into an uncomfortable space where you can grow and love, peace, and honor, right? And so you don't grow just because time passed. You grow because you have to face yourself, right? I know I didn't like who I used to be. And so I had to face me. But now I start to love myself even more. And with that being said, I started loving people better. And I started learning that I have to move in a different direction. I can't keep moving in the same direction and expecting something different. And so I am so happy that you guys came and joined me tonight. I hope that you guys enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please remember that growth is our responsibility. It is our responsibility to grow. We are responsible for our own growth. And just because it's uncomfortable, it doesn't mean you're not going in the right direction. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. And remember, my birthday is Wednesday. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you so much. It's your girl, Dr. Tasha Rose, your transparent sister in women's healing. And remember, I love you and God loves you too. Peace.